Hello, everyone. Thank you for making the time to join me today. My name is Maria, and I currently lead the team implementing STEM in a Box in El Salvador and Nigeria. STEM in a Box is one of the 400 youth-led initiatives supported by global changemakers and provides youth with didactic guides and materials for them to assemble robots while they complete the national math curriculum. Now, this initiative has been entirely tested and implemented during the pandemic. So today I'm here to tell you more about the process and specifically how you can scale your initiatives through partnerships amidst the situation we're currently in. So let's get started. Today, we'll be discussing the story behind STEM in a Box, just to provide you with some context before jumping right into youth-led sustainable development. Finally, we will be wrapping off with some tips and guides for you to nourish these partnerships in a digital world. Before I start, I would like to give you some stats. Why education? So today there are around 258 million youth out of school. Experts estimate that by 2035, only 63% of youth aged 20 to 24 will complete upper secondary school. In order to reach 100%, governments and international institutions will need to spend around 39 billion US dollars. In addition, there is a 100-year gap between educational outcomes in developed and developing countries. And as this were not enough, around a year ago, the Malala Fund estimated that once the pandemic is over, an additional 20 million girls will be out of school. So please keep this number in mind for the upcoming slides. On our story, I did want to give you a brief timeline just because sometimes when you attend these types of workshops and presentations, it may seem that it was 90 miles on the freeway all the way up, while in reality, there were a lot of stones and struggles along the way that I felt it was important to share as well. So personally, I always knew I wanted to give back and help El Salvador's youth. At the time, I didn't necessarily understand how we could actually have a tangible impact in these young people's lives. Here in Latin America, we were very used to organizations doing community visits, bringing toys, bringing piñatas, bringing food. And at the end of the day, I felt that the only thing these activities did was perpetuate complacency. So what we did was start visiting local schools, just so we can mainly talk to the students and learn about the reality firsthand. Very quickly, we realized that motivation was not existent, and at the same time, they didn't really have dreams or hopes for their futures. We heard a lot about how they didn't see the point of finishing school or even attending school if there were not going to be a job waiting for them, and at the same time, the gang members were around the corner. So with this in mind, I think it was in March 2019 when our university class was taken to the Comau headquarters in Torino. Comau is the company that assembles the assembly lines for Fiat Chrysler. And they actually take one of these robots. It is a 6-axis assembly line robot to teach math, art, music, and even logistics, depending on the audience. They've had wonderful results in terms of an increase in motivation and even better academic performance. So at this time, we had some conversations with the company and shared the reality in our country and started discussing the possibility of bringing one of the robots home. However, the budget for the project was so extensive that just in terms of infrastructure, you can imagine what we could have done with that amount of money. So a bit disappointed after one of those meetings, I had lunch with two of my best friends. And my reasoning at the time was like, okay, if this company cannot fund the project now, maybe we can keep knocking doors and eventually a company might want to do it. One of my friends just stopped me and was like, Maria, it seems like you have the knowledge, you have the motivation, you probably have the resources as well. Why don't you create it yourself? And this was exactly the moment where the idea to build STEM in a box from scratch was born. This also brings me to my first yellow star, which is my first piece of advice for you. Surround yourself with people who encourage you to follow your dreams, follow your instincts, most importantly, and also please be that friend for your friends as well. So with this idea in mind, I came home in the summer of 2019 with the idea to build this project. I had the opportunity to pitch it to a private university, and it was their faculty of engineering who helped us find professors who served as mentors and also the students who were part of our development team. This is a project that has been entirely designed, created, and implemented by youth for youth as well. It took us around 8 months till we built our first prototypes, and we planned to test them in May 2020. However, needless to say, those workshops never took place at that time. At this time, I remember feeling very disappointed, and I had also the feeling that all the resources, the time invested in just designing these workshops just vanished in a matter of seconds. So I'm gonna recommend you to do what we did. When things get hard, just talk to people, ask for help, go back to your friends, your colleagues, your networks, and just talk. And you might be surprised how quickly a solution can arise. It was at this time when I had a short meeting with Sara, an esteemed member from our GCM community. And she, on one hand, recommended taking the project management course. And at the same time, she said I should reach out in the WhatsApp group chat. When I reached out, I met Sophie from Nigeria, who felt so connected with this mission and with these SDGs that she offered to run the same pilot tests in her home country if we shipped her some equipment. And this is practically the only reason why we are operating in Nigeria at the moment. A few months after, we received a GCM grant for which we were only eligible since we had taken the project management course. So now you can start seeing how everything is interconnected. Now, around 6 months later, we can proudly say that we successfully completed our pilot tests, reaching around 200 youth in El Salvador and Nigeria. So just to give you a brief snapshot about what we do and the students we help. I asked you to remember the number of 20 million girls. So exactly when things got hard and we were all in a lockdown and didn't really know how the future might look like, we started thinking how we could empower and help those directly affected by the pandemic. And it turned out that it was girls who were the first ones who left the classrooms and were probably gonna be the last ones to return. So for that reason, this project targets mostly girls. Around 75% of our students are female, and we're the ones who were falling behind in their education, mainly due to lack of internet access and in some cases, even electricity. We've had some boys, and this number ranged to around 30%. This is also something that has been entirely created and designed for youth age 14 to 18 years old, mainly because this was the point where most dropout rates occurred. At this, again, we had a very small percentage of some students that were slightly younger, but took part in our workshops. So far, we have delivered 56 boxes in 2 continents. And here on this map, you can see our locations. The 2 red dots are the countries in which the pilot test took place. And now you can see 3 additional ones, which are 3 African countries for which we will start sending materials in the upcoming months. Now, you might be wondering, how did this happen so quickly in a matter of 6 months and during a global pandemic? And the only reason and most important reason is through partnerships. As Henry Ford once said, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, while working together is your success. So without further ado, let's get into youth-led sustainable development and the aftermath of COVID-19. So I didn't want to start this section without giving you some insights on the power of our generation. Generation C classifies youth born between the late 1990s and early 2010s. We are on track to becoming the best educated generation yet, mainly due to the fact that we're most likely to have one college educated parent and go to college ourselves. We are often characterized as communaholics. Now, the word behind this term is community, actually. And this means that we're radically inclusive. We're capable of connecting with different groups that don't necessarily look like we do. And also something that I thought was very interesting is that we sometimes don't distinguish between friends we have made in the real life and friends we made online through our work, through our activism, etc. Finally, we're also characterized as the resilient generation. A recent study conducted by Deloitte suggested that 3 out of 4 Gen-Zers said that the pandemic only made them more resilient and aware of the needs of their peers and the needs of people around them. These 3 powers connected with connectivity will take us places. So let me illustrate the power of partnerships through our example. The pandemic has made both personal and professional development more accessible. There is this platform called Opportunity Desk. They have a website, but as well an Instagram profile. And now if you're like me and if you most mornings start by checking your phone, checking your social media, I can recommend you to follow them because every morning they post opportunities that range in fields of art, activism, science, and these are opportunities that you can be part of online, and even you can find some that you can do locally in your home country. So through Opportunity Desk, I came across the opportunity to speak at the Youth STEM 2030 Summit, which took place in October of last year. This community provides youth with professional opportunities to foster scientific and academic skills. And also, if you're interested in the SDGs, you can be part of their art team and design the graphs and figures that the young scientists use for their publications. They have also recently acquired their DOY, which is an amazing opportunity for young scientists to start sharing and showcasing their research. So connectivity has also become a public good, and even in the countries that were previously more skeptical about the internet and technology have started creating measurements for youth to have this more available. This has also increased the opportunity for remote cooperation between individuals and NGOs. Now, it was at the summit, the Youth STEM 2030 Summit, in which I took part of a panel with Pupe, the founder of Genius Education Zambia. And we're now currently working on a partnership to send tools for her organization to bring STEM in a box to Lusaka, to her home country. Now, let me give you some tips on this. So, on some practical steps for you to start nourishing partnerships. First, be patient. Partnerships don't arise overnight. It is very important for you to first build a relationship and trust, most importantly. This summit took place in October, and we actually just started thinking about a partnership this January. So it did take a couple of months. What is very important to build this trust and relationship is for you to just stay in touch, stay in the loop, ask your colleagues and what projects they're working on, and probably you will find an opportunity for you to contribute to their work. Secondly, you can pay attention to WhatsApp groups. Nowadays, they're very powerful to, one, stay in touch and just keep on the loop of what your peers are working on, as I was just saying. And finally, keep your eyes open for opportunities. Nowadays, you can even find them on Instagram and even TikTok. So, a way forward. If you have an idea, I can mostly recommend the toolkits provided by our Changemakers school. Most importantly, the design thinking framework. So just very briefly to introduce you to this framework, the first step is problem framing. And here I can recommend one thing: fall in love with the problem and not the solution. Change making and activism requires an extra sense or just comfort towards flexibility. Your idea can look entirely differently to what you picture in the beginning. So it's very important for you to keep evolving and just be comfortable with that flexibility on one hand, and at the same time, uncertainty that our works takes. Secondly, we have empathizing. This is also a step that has been entirely important in our journey, which requires for you to put a face and a human behind the problem you're trying to solve. So this is the point where it's very important for you to go back, visit the communities, and hear what's happening from the people affected firsthand. Third, we have the process of ideation. And this is where, when you think about probable solutions and start the brainstorming process. Here we have a few frameworks and matrices that can be very helpful, like the iceberg model. So again, feel free to check out our online resources. Finally, we have the process of prototyping and testing, which is very essential for your launch. The thing that I can recommend here the most is for you to include your target group in every step along the way and try to get as much feedback as you can. Now, on long distance relationships, probably everyone who has ever been in a long distance relationship has told you not to get involved in one. But I'm here to give you some short feedback and tips on how you can make this sustainable and just enjoyable in the long term. First, start with your why. I sometimes say that I am an introvert. I find it very hard to engage in a conversation and connect with people specifically when I don't know them firsthand or have some background information. Luckily, most of us change makers have a very strong why that inspires us every day to work towards the project we're working on and our long-term goal. That is why it's very important to just start with that story. It is highly likely that your partner will have a similar story, and this will be a great basis for you guys to connect and build trust. This also shows that you have genuine reasons for helping people. Secondly, aim for flexible and direct communication. This is very important. Emails and LinkedIn messages are a great tool, but when it comes to creating a solution together and implementing it in the long run, it is very important for you to have direct communication with your partners and their team. WhatsApp or Telegram are a very effective method. And for example, our team is a fan of voice message, of course, shorter ones. And what we do is just send a quick voice message with our feedback, our comments, and even also with questions. This point also brings me to a very important one. Take breaks. Breaks are going to be essential because your emotional, your mental, and your physical health are going to be your greatest asset in this process. So take them as often as you can, but please do let your team know that you need a day off, because it's just not fair for you to disappear for a couple of days. We all need to disappear sometimes, but if you let them know, they will be happy to respect your time off and not be wondering if you're okay in the first place, or just stay in the air not knowing what's next and what to do after. Finally, empathy is key. We're all suffering during this pandemic. We're juggling school, sometimes even a job, to sustain ourselves on top of our activism and our work for our community. So keep this in mind. Check in with your friends, check in with your colleagues, and just be there to support each other. When things get hard, if you remember this, it is just easier for you to calm down and remember what actually matters in the long run. If you're looking for helps, I can recommend the Changemakers School, as I said, specifically our ideation toolkit and the project management course. This will in the future make you eligible for a grant as well. And just have an organization that backs you up and provides feedback when you need it at the time you need it. Again, opportunitydesk.org for professional and development opportunities, professional and personal opportunities. And finally, some other organizations that do an amazing work in empowering young change makers. We have Girl Up, which is a organization by the United Nations Foundation empowering young girls, mostly teenagers. There's Humanity Up, and as well Yunus and Youth, which has a very powerful accelerator program for startups as well. So that will be all on my end. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out through email, through LinkedIn, through our website. I'll be more than happy to connect with you and see how I can help. So thank you very much for listening, and keep fighting for those dreams.